Thanks, Max. Yeah, so just introduce myself again. Chris Libonati, I'm the editor of Central Current. And so we wanted to convene this panel today because, everything, this project is evolving, right? The timeline after several years is kind of getting going. I think everyone saw the HUD grant come through. Just figured it was the right time to do a panel like this. But the first thing I want to do is just go through, obviously Max did a high level, or just like a very brief introduction, but if we can go my right to left, just say who you are and your connection to the project.
Good evening, my name is Marquita Hetherington. I am a neighborhood navigator, Blueprint 15, and I'm also a resident that resides in Pioneer Homes.
Raekwon Pride Green, Executive Director of Blueprint 15. And my family is from the footprint on my mother's side, third generation, and on my father's side, I'm fourth generation.
Simmons, Executive Director, Syracuse Housing Authority. Been in Syracuse Housing Authority for over 18 years.
Michael Collins, I'm Commissioner for the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development for the City of Syracuse. Ours is the department that all of the building permits and zoning approvals that run through, as well as a lot of the other work related to it.
Awesome. All right, so I think I'm going to open this very broad, but I do want to talk about the timeline here for the project. I know that there might be some indefinite things, but if we could talk a little bit to the time, if Bill, maybe in particular, if we could talk a little bit to the timeline of the project, and where it's at right now, and when you see maybe shovels in the ground. I know some of it, like I said, might be not definite.
Sure, thanks. Well, the project, as many of you know, involves the redevelopment of Pioneer Homes and McKinney Manor and all of this Oliver Towers. And ultimately, we'll get to Central Village. But we were looking at starting with McKinney Manor. Starting at the Oliver Towers first, doing a rehab there for those residents. And then we will be moving towards McKinney Manor, demolition of those 75 units and building approximately 130 on that footprint. And then moving into phases 3 through 11 at Pioneer Homes. And it's a project that will probably take over 10 years to complete, 11 different phases. And we're pretty much starting with getting the financing and all that together for the projects and closing sometime in late this year or early 2025.
And when you say closing, sorry, just because I don't necessarily know what that means, I'm sure some in the audience may not. What do you mean by closing?
Yeah, we're getting the resources from the Department of Housing and Community Renewal. They will provide the tax credits. And so when they say closing, you're looking at all the dollars coming together. We got the investors. And then we start able to move forward with relocation and redevelopment of properties.
I know everyone's involved in some different way, but what does that mean for the housing authority, and what would you guys would have to start doing next once closing comes in?
So in the case of Oliver Towers, it's a high-rise building with about 180 residents existing, and we will relocate any of those residents in place. We have a contractor, we have a developer, McCormick Baron Salvatore, and we have a contractor that will work towards redeveloping the units in phases. And so some of the residents will move from out of the empty units that have been remodeled into the new ones, and then they'll just continue that manner. When it comes down to McKinney Manor, which has 75 units, and I have a lot of green space, we will relocate the remaining 63 units, families that we have in public housing or get a housing choice voucher, and then we will start demolishing those units and building a grand total of about 135 units that will be mixed income, and won't be just all public housing residents.
I know with some of the table setting on the housing authority side, Michael, I know that there's a lot going on the city side, and I know that they're not necessarily the same, the community grid vision plan, but how would you, and some of the other stuff going on, but how would you view the city's role around what's going on at SHA and what it's going to do around that.
So the city's got a fairly comprehensive plan for all residents there, constituents. And so we're really looking to make sure that all the best ways possible is the best project that it could be. We have also, to your point around community grid plan, they're two separate projects, but they're not equivalent there. So Federal Highway Department is where the money is coming from for 81. So one of the ways that we've worked to tie them together is working with New York State Department of Transportation. We were able to secure a $180 million grant to make improvements along the 81 project. And very specifically, $30 million of it will be administered by the city within this footprint. So that's one of the ways. And then, frankly, just a lot of engagement with neighbors, with business owners that are in the overall footprint, to make sure that what we're doing there is what's important to those that are there, that have been there, as well as who else might find this the neighborhood they want to be with it being redeveloped and with that massive barrier being pulled down. And then, as I mentioned in the introduction, everything that has to do with how the buildings are constructed from a permitting standpoint, from a zoning standpoint, where they're placed on the site. And then lastly, fundraising. We've been, I talked about the $30 million. Mayor Walsh was able to secure $10 million very specifically for the first phase which we're going to end up using it for some of the units, we're going to use it for some of the public infrastructure, and I'm sure we're going to probably set other things, but it's pretty comprehensive.
Vanessa, just real quick, I know I kind of had everyone describe who they are and their relation to the project. If you could go ahead and do that real quick, sorry.
Yeah, and I apologize for being late. My name is Vanessa Owens-Chaplin. I am the director of the Racial Justice Center at the New York Civil Liberties Union. I'm a civil rights attorney by trade. I've been involved in the I-81 redevelopment project, I think, since it became a real conversation back in 2017. The primary goal of our work is to elevate community concerns, work along the community to make sure that they're being heard in the project and they're also receiving the same benefits. As a result of the project, and highlight some of the burden that the community experienced. And we were also involved in the litigation where we supported the New York State DOT's community grid action.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, actually, real quick, turn back over. In terms of, things you've seen with this project, I know you guys have probably done some door-to-door work, and, what do you feel like you've heard from residents about this project?
I think overwhelmingly, people feel overwhelmed about the amount of projects that are happening in their neighborhood, and I think Michael put it very clearly. This is one big project to them, and so trying to convince them that this is multiple projects happening in their footprint doesn't really matter. That conversation is certainly moot because they will be affected by all of these projects. And so how they be affected, what kind of security they have in terms of being able to afford their housing after the redevelopment happens, I think is one of the major concerns. And cohesion, right? People don't want to feel like they're chess pieces on the chessboard where you can just move them around and move them back and move them around and move them back. So some of the biggest concerns that we heard is like, how are we going to be supported with this massive redevelopment and how are we being heard during this process?
In terms of, Rick, Juan, Marquita, in talking to, I know you guys have connected with residents too, and Rick, Juan, like you said, you're born in the footprint or grew up in the footprint. What have you guys heard from residents about this project so far?
Yeah, so when it comes to this project, it depends on who you talk to. There are some people that support it, feel informed. There are some people who are not as engaged, so they buy into all the hearsay because they just don't know. And then there are the other people who are somewhere in the middle. So I always just say it depends on who you speak to. There's a lot of people who live in this footprint, so everybody has their own opinion and their own challenges that they have to deal with.
I was gonna say, I know some of the work, at least in terms of connecting with residents, keeping them informed, has been part of what Blueprint 15 has done. In terms of keeping them informed, what has been the process for you guys so far? I know it's been a long process, so pick a starting point when you.
It's been a long process. It's gonna become even longer. At Blueprint 15, we have our neighborhood navigators program. So we have 4 neighborhood navigators, 1 live in McKinney Manor and 3 live in Manor Homes. So they do door to door, they do cold calling, they communicate however they feel necessary. When there is some type of community engagement event that we're involved in, my neighborhood navigators, they call people, they pass out flyers, they knock on doors, but they also live there. So on their way to the store, they're getting stopped and being asked to answer questions. So they're always on the clock, as I would say. So we try many different things, and we also host community engagement events ourselves, sometimes in collaboration with the Syracuse Housing Authority, sometimes with the city, and sometimes they're standalone, but we always make sure that they're involved in some capacity.
You know, I guess in terms of the most common questions you get from people that live in the footprint that's gonna be affected, what would you say the most common question you get is?
I would turn that over to Marquita because she gets the direct questions more than I would.
The number one question that we receive is just, where am I going? Sorry about that. Number one question that we receive is, where are we going when this all happens?
Obviously, that's a pretty tough question for you to answer, so, but you know, what are the steps you would take someone through when they have that question? Or what would you recommend to those people when they ask you, where do you send them?
So we have, we work with an agency, Urban Strategies, who actually does do the door-to-door, taking the survey and asking those questions. So we, they do ask where their preference is when it comes to moving out of their apartments, like that. And so, once that information is collected, it is then forwarded and given to Syracuse Housing, who, you know, they give the realistic of, we don't have that space available, this is available, this is more than likely where you're going.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, I don't know who's best to answer this question, so I'm gonna ask you kind of broadly, you know, what has that process been like where, you know, when they do come in and they do ask, you know, where am I going, where can I go? What is maybe, I know you can't give a specific answer because there's, at least in McKinney, right, there's 63 different answers probably. But what do you tell them? What's the advice that's given? Like how does Urban Strategies help in that?
Well, we, as I mentioned earlier, partnered with McCormick, Barron, and Salso. It's a development team that's been out there for over 25 years and done a number of these projects, working with public housing throughout the country. And they also partnered with Urban Strategies, who's have the same role, been around for a long time, and working with families who are in these very vulnerable situations. But you know, the Department of Housing and Urban Development provides legal protections for all these residents. And so anytime a housing authority is saying we're going to redevelop properties, this whole thing is really all about choice for residents. And that's why they call it the Choice Neighborhood Plan. It's about giving them an opportunity to say, hey, look, we currently have, we knew that we were going to have to give these families an option when it came down to do the redevelopment. And let me just add that when you put together a redevelopment program with the Department of Housing and Community Renewal using these tax credits, you have to redevelop the property in an 18-year period of time. And then those residents that were moved have the right to return. And many of them, especially in this type of housing market, want to make sure that there's somewhere place for them to go. And so the first 63 families that may be moving, 40 of them said they want to remain in public housing. We have places for them to go. The other 20 said, I'd like to take a housing choice voucher. We'll have vouchers available for them. Urban Strategies, Blueprint 15, Syracuse Housing Authority will all be working with these families because it's a nerve-wracking kind of situation. Where am I going? And although these residents have these rights and protections, they don't always believe it. Oftentimes I know that the Syracuse Housing Authority has been facing cuts from the federal government for the past 15 years. You know, we've been dying to death with 1,000 cuts. We had came in with this program in partnership. Been working with the I-81 project that started some 16 years ago, talking about, you know, redeveloping the neighborhood and what can we do. And at the time, when the idea, when I first was involved with the committee that was talking about developing I-81, from my standpoint, whether they rebuild the highway or brought it down to the street, I knew it was going to be a major disruption in the neighborhood. And how could we make sure that these residents benefit? And I talked to from the folks from the urban strategies group that invited the Syracuse Housing Authority and New Orleans out to the Embarcadero area in San Francisco where that viaduct fell down. And so it just shows you how life can really return in a different way. And I said to the gentleman who was conducting the tour, I said, well, listen, it looks like there's going to be some major disruption in the neighborhood. When it's, you have the process of eminent domain, what really happens? I mean, how can I really get anything for residents if the federal and state government doesn't have the right to come in and tear up the neighborhood? Should I be getting some attorneys? What should I be doing? And he says, Bill, back in 1993, President Clinton came out with the executive order, which says that anytime there's a major disruption in the community, whether it's low income or particularly of color, there has to be some enhancements. And so, from working from that standpoint, we hired a team, Gilmore King, back in 2014. They helped us put together a plan that was going to deconcentrate poverty in that neighborhood, a plan that would take advantage of the fact that we were close to University Hill and all of the employers there, and the new and emerging downtown. And this was kind of started the idea of putting together this redevelopment plan. Now, Pioneer Homes is the first public housing development in New York State. And if you drive by there with all the bricks, you just look at it and say, wow, this thing is still in good shape. But it doesn't meet marketability and all of the new codes and standards for families and for visitability. And we had to do something different. And HUD has put us in a position where they came out with a rental assistance demonstration program, a program that allows housing authorities to keep the funding for the residents, but go from the public housing program to the Section 8 program. And what that allows us to do is go out and get funding from tax credits and other sources to redevelop our properties. And so, I think very often when people look at housing authority tearing down the development and rebuilding new, oftentimes the residents who live in that neighborhood don't get the right to return, but with public housing, they have that right. And they're going to be given those rights, and they're all going to be enforced, not by Bill Simmons or anybody else, but by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, that those folks have a right to return. And we're going to ensure that those 674 folks will have those units. We're going to have more units for mixed income. We want to deconcentrate the poverty. And so we're just, making sure that we work with residents as we go forward in this process, because we're doing it in 11 different phases so that the vast majority of the residents can take advantage of the redevelopment when it's all said and done. And so we're very, very excited about the project. It's a big project. Needless to say, probably, as big as many projects going on in the region, but it's a project that the federal government has supported. They came in with $50 million with the Choice Neighborhood Grant. The governor has been involved, the state, the city, the county. Everyone wants to see this improvement for its residents. And unfortunately, it's going to require them to make at least one move, maybe two, but in the end, like, a lot better.
There's a lot there. There's a couple things I want to break down. The rental assistance demonstration or ad conversion. So, like in layman's terms, right? That's, public housing is Section 8 with a public-private partnership, right?
Yeah, the essential difference is the residents will still have 70% of their support in terms of subsidy from the federal government, and most of our residents pay 30% of their income towards their rent. And so, with this demonstration program, because it really wasn't the will on the part of Congress to start funding public housing like they used to do years ago and deal with all of our needs, they came out with a program that says, housing authorities, if you want to move into the Section 8 program, the residents will have the same subsidy to support them on a daily basis. But this will allow you to go out and use the tax credit program and other dollars to reposition your properties and do something different and new. And we decided to move in that direction.
I know the movement question and that concern has been in a number of panels now, and I think that's maybe the biggest question that I hear. If anyone doesn't think that, let me know. But in terms of right of return, what is included in right of return? Or what will be included in right of return for residents?
So as we build out these units and get approvals from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they want to make sure that those 675 units that residents are housed right now will be rebuilt and have some place to come back to. And so that's what that means. And to inform of their rights, and again, many of them want to stay in public housing. We have 23 units of public housing, another 200 units of affordable housing, so we have an opportunity for them to move into those units. Now, when we first started this discussion over 10 years ago, affordable housing or housing in any community wasn't as problematic as it is today here in Syracuse and throughout the country. So but we've been able to, because of the large size of the Syracuse Housing Authority, we're going to be, and the fact that we have some vacant land, we'll be able to build some new units for residents to move into first. And between those two combinations of the existing units that we have now and the new units that we'll be building, we'll be able to move 50% of the residents from old to new. We only have to move once, and then the other 50% will probably have to move twice.
But right, and so what type of requirements will be in that right of return agreement? So, are there any stipulations that'll be on current tenants who want to move back, right? I'm sure being current on rent is one of them, but I'm sure there are others.
Well, you want to make sure that the residents are in good standing, and most of them will know that before they even move out, they're good standing and the ability to return. But again, it's an opportunity to make life better for the residents that are there today. Many of them have a lot of anxiety because it's a big change for them, and they don't know. All they have is what Bill Simmons is telling them, or what HUD may be telling them. But everybody knows that, it's government, who trusts government. I mean, that's the vulnerability when you're low income and people of color. So, but one of the reasons why we're doing it in phases is because we want to make sure that once we build those new units and they see their family and friends coming back, then they'll be more supportive. But it's going to take, sacrifice on their part to move out and then move back in later.
Linus, I don't know if you're expecting this question, but I know you've done some research around, I feel like you guys have done some research around this, I feel like we've had conversations about this before. Have you seen other rights of return in other places? And what do they usually say?
Yeah, a few things. So right to return is a little bit tricky, just like Section 8 vouchers are a little bit tricky. So Section 8 vouchers, unlike public housing, are attached to the person. And there's a lot of ways that you can get kicked off your Section 8 voucher. And so I think it's a little more risky when you're putting folks out in the community with a Section 8 voucher. We saw in my work, a lot of folks who get retaliated against from your landlord. Like, let's say they file a code complaint, the landlord retaliates, evicts them, right? That's automatic. Law of your Section 8 voucher to get eviction from your housing. So I think there's some housing vulnerability with trying to kind of transfer people from affordable housing to Section 8 vouchers. If you keep behind in your rent, right? That's another reason why you can lose your Section 8 voucher. There's a lot of reasons why the government's a little fickle around Section 8 vouchers, and so they're not that black and white where if you get it, you're set. There's a risk that you run when you have a Section 8 voucher. I think the second to your point around right to return is a little bit tricky, and we saw across the nation how this thing has played out very bad, and we saw how it played out okay. I don't think we saw an example, and I hope this is the example, where the right to return was actually a really good outcome. We saw some organizations or some places, I think New Orleans was a good example, where there was about 3% of folks returned, right? And that's because the developers couldn't find their phone number, they didn't have an up-to-date phone number, they had no way to reach them. And so we know that people who tend to live below the income, tend to live below the poverty line will often change their numbers. So there's a kind of responsibility of the tenant to keep the folks updated on what their phone numbers is, keep the folks updated on what's happening in their life. And if you're thinking about a project that's 5-6 years down the line, your life could be very different. And you could forget to change your number, you could forget to inform the developers, and now you got that call and you missed it. And so we've seen, I think the most successful way to return that we saw was like a 20% return. And then it also gets complicated depending on who your developer is and what kind of policies or procedures they put in place for you to return. And we've seen choice neighborhoods, for example, some of them require you to have a 620 credit score. Some of them have required you to not have any convictions on your record, misdemeanor or felony. Some of them required to work at least 20 hours a week, so that kind of takes out all the folks who are on disability and Social Security. So I think there's a lot of nuance around the right to return, and we start having this public-private partnership, and so we need to look out for some of those things.
Is any of that definitive at this point, or when would something like that be developed in Syracuse?
Well, yeah, with the right to return, whether it's public housing or Section 8, you always have to adhere to rules and regulations. We get people all the time that don't adhere to rules and regulations will pay their rent. There's no different on that part. No guarantees. And we are in the process of developing the standards for residents and returning. But as I mentioned before, we're doing this in 11 phases, whereby most of the residents will only move once from their old public housing unit into the new. And then the remaining will be with a Section 8 voucher. And many of those residents that will be moving twice, a lot of them want to move into public housing until their unit is rebuilt. And when you're working with the New York State Department of Community Renewal and the tax credit program, you have to rebuild those units in 18 months, that particular units. So it's not an extremely long time that they're out of pocket, out of communication. We have Syracuse Housing Authority, we have Urban Strategies, we have Groups of 15, all these groups that are working with these families to make sure we try to stay in touch and connection with them. The message right, many of the families it's about choice. So some families may take the voucher, move to the community, settle in with a family member, school's good here, hey Bill, I don't want to come back. But that's what it's all about, doing the choice, not forcing anybody to do anything. But so many would like to be in a community where you got rent, housing, mixed income. With Group of 15 is building a new school for early childhood learning, in the YMCA, creating opportunities and services for families for them to really thrive. And so so in terms of the details of the good standing, we're working through all of that. We got a little time, but I think that everybody knows the commitment on the part of the Department of Housing and Community Development and Syracuse Housing Authority is making life better. And we got the city and the state and all kinds of groups that are very, very much committed to these residents. So I just, we try to minimize our situation when the resident moves out and the situation and they get worse than better.
A bit of a kind of niche question here, but look at eviction calendars at least once a week, right? And it's no secret the toll that the pandemic has taken on tenants and landlords. If a Syracuse Housing Authority tenant owes back rent, right? Obviously, being up on your rent might be a requirement to come back. But what help is there right now for a tenant at SHA to get current and then maybe return?
So during the pandemic, so many residents did fall behind in their rent. But we did work with the federal government, New York State, we worked with the city of Syracuse with all these dollars that were available to help residents get caught up. I'm a member of the New York State Public Housing Authority Executive Directors Group. We had advocated to get more money for some of those residents that were fall behind. But you get to a point where the HUD and the state is saying, yeah, some of these folks have got to catch up. And when they meet with us prior to COVID or prior to any situation, we always try to make back payment arrangements for residents to get caught up. That's the nature of our business, that's what we deal with. But ultimately, everybody's got to be held accountable. And so if you're not working with us and utilizing some of these dollars that the county makes available for residents to get caught up, it's not a big, great outcome.
I'm going to turn it over to the crowd. That's the last question I had. If I missed someone's question from the forum, I'm sorry. Please ask it. Just because I didn't ask it doesn't mean you can't. So
I'll be coming around to the microphone if anyone could raise their hand if they have a question. Start over here.
Hi, thanks. I'm Bonita Siegel, I'm the facilitator for the Housing Justice Task Force with ACTS. I have two questions. The first one is, I am aware that the RAD program will sunset in 5 years. What does that mean for your 10-year plan of transformation for our Syracuse neighbors?
I have not heard a sunset on RAD, and as I just pointed out, we have been working with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They're very much aware of our program being phased out in a 10-year period of time, and they just gave us $50 million in support of what we're doing. I have not heard about phasing out RAD.
Okay, and my second question is, I know that you filed for and received an amendment to the initial plan that involves phases 1, 2, and 3, McKinney Manor. And when that new plan came out, Frisbee Court was no longer a phase, and that's, I think, the portion of Pioneer Homes that everybody has considered possibly some kind of deal with Upstate was going to be made. Can you explain why, like, it used to be 12 phases, now Frisbee Court is not a phase?
So what we, during the process of putting together our plan, and we had some 64 public meetings, and I had meetings with all of our elected officials, the non-clerk, explaining the plan that we were putting forward. At the same time, as a member of the University Hill Corporation and being partners with Upstate, they sponsor our basketball team. They partner with many of our residents. They have them go out and be proactive about their health needs. I was made aware of this new hospital opportunity that Upstate was planning to put in. When you look at, we don't have any maps here, but when you look at the farthest phases of the East Adams program, we're trying to have a market rate community. And those houses, those maybe 150 houses on the east side of I-81 face the back end of the hospital, their docks and their dumping grounds. And it's going to be very, very hard to put together a program that's going to be marketable for families facing that environment. So when I heard that Upstate was thinking about building their first Upstate optometry school, I asked them if they want to consider being in that location, and maybe we can build maybe just another high-rise building for the residents adjacent to our two viaduct towers, which is really a part of our plan that we put together back in 2014. So, as the executive director who put together a $1 billion plan, I'm looking for opportunities, for dollars and services to go in. When we interviewed all the residents during those 64 meetings and asked them what was their top priority, they said security. And Upstate has a security team that's currently on our footprint, willing to help be in the community and help with security issues. So there was a lot to really begin and talk about. But we were only in the early stages of talking about the idea before it became public and so controversial.
Hi, I'm Megan Wilson, and I want to speak from a resident point of view, living in Davenport Court at Pioneer Homes. Some of the things are said is very technical here, and I'm part of the housing task force. But we don't have a communication entity with the so-called powers that be for us residents to be treated as human beings. Our tenants association is very dysfunctional, and when we try to have a meeting to talk about mini education, naming our streets, giving history for our pre-K children, and also growing food, but more than growing food, making medicine. I have donations of microscopes and stuff. And I talked to Tara and other people that were on the board and to talk about the issue of our housing rights. Yes, we did a survey. You do the survey, you get a $500 gift card. Where is that gift card? I want to be treated as a human being. I was at a Southside Connection meeting saying, and I cried, I said, because there's folks on the Syracuse Housing Tenants Association don't want me to live there. I'm 73 years old. I've been across the nation. They took my children from me in Seattle, Washington. I had to go to the Capitol and talk to Senator Clinton to get my children back. My foster mother raised me from 2 years old, and their parents are former enslaved. And they said, when you get it up here, you can't take it away. You might be talking about the technical stuff, which is all well and fine. It looks all well and fine, the building. But what about the human part? It's not there! It is not there! We're gonna have a voter registration this weekend. But the Syracuse housing isn't backing it. We asked for a $5,000 grant for the emotion garden. Lisa Archer, I'll pick you up from your apartment, neighbor. What happened to that $5,000? There's a lot of things that's not touching us as human beings living in Syracuse housing. It's terrible. The building talking and all that stuff is all great. But still us. We got ideas. Some of the people that even work there are carpenters and stuff. So I'm looking and talking to different individuals in the groups that I'm in about housing, how to make the abandoned housing available, how to teach carpentry, how to make medicine from stuff we grow. When I was in first grade, Auntie and Mom, that was the people we fought. We gave us onions, a red onion, yellow onion, and taught us how to make clothes, dye for clothes. These are things young people need to know. And right now, we're going to be at a food shortage because the Hurricane Helen came in and they said the food is going to be short. Why not help us with our gardens and with our dreams? Our dreams is to teach our children from pre-K to when I'm 74 to 100 years old, my son said, I'm going to live too. Let's do something. We care. I care about the new building you're going to build. They're very excited. But where's the human part?
So, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mabel. So just to that point, to a large degree, Blueprint 15, our not-for-profit partner, is building an early childhood center in the community, a YMCA, doing a lot of things that will be working with residents. Our tenant association, I go to virtually all those meetings, and in addition to I mentioned 64 meetings we had in the last 2 years.
Yeah, the agenda. What we gonna have on the agenda? Dog doodle.
So, I think that, we have urban strategies, Blueprint 15, the city of Syracuse, Syracuse Housing Authority, all these organizations that are very, very much involved in working with residents and getting their input in the housing model and the neighborhood that they want to see. And that's a large part of what has been rendered here today. Walter?
Yes, I'm on the board of the Syracuse Housing Authority. Maybe I love you. And skepticism is good. And I want to first of all commend Vanessa when she came to the rescue as we ran my alliance network had when these companies started happening. We recognized that don't repeat the history of the 15 ward. And by her work coming in to really work to hold everybody accountable, let's give her a big hand. Because without what they've done for us, we wouldn't have the confidence. Give us a big hand. You don't even know what she's done I grew up on this before. I understand the community. Maybe to your one point, we're going to have a retreat with the board, and some of the discussions come up to make sure we're listening. How do we empower our tenant association?
Yeah.
So we'll be working on that. So Bill, the director, and his staff is here. Is that we know we got to build the infrastructure of the tenant association.
And we get
that. We've heard that. So we're working on that. My last thing is what we're not hearing is the transformation of this neighborhood in the commercial component piece that when we're talking about a supermarket, commercial building, there's a lot going on, and you have to do mixed income to make it work. The last thing, I want to commend Bill because as me, the Alliance Network in the 80s, when Kennedy Square, maybe happened, this place, there was no oversight. I know that. There was no, what happened at Kennedy Square, there was no checks and balances. And we didn't have enough representatives. However, Housing Authority came in, so for me to think about someone who can do this kind of mass project of relocation, They did it on their own dime, just Van Bristol, to replace a lot of those folks there. The challenge today is placing people in good living homes. That's why we all have housing vision, home headquarters. We try to build more and build up. So we gotta get the kind of subsidy to make it affordable to build. So Bill, I'll let you share a little bit about the work we did with Kennedy Square. That was not your job, but you came in. And so there's a model that they already worked on to help with that thing.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Walter. Yeah, when I back in, lose track of time, like I said, I've been in housing authority for 18 years, probably 10 years ago, I know before 81. And the state wanted to get rid of Kennedy Square, and the city asked us to come in and handle the relocation because we were running the housing choice voucher program. And the same thing happened with Townsend Towers. The state owned those properties and they had to relocate those residents. And in those particular cases, you know, probably maybe 20% of the residents were living there. They were pretty much vacant and in bad shape. So we did learn a lot from being involved in that process. And as a result, doing this project in phases so that the vast majority of the residents only have to move once is huge. Because people have to move 2 or 3 times. They're not going to make it back no matter how much money you give them, no matter how much support. So we set this thing up in 11 different phases, so most of the residents get an opportunity to move once. And you know, resident engagement and support is very, very critical to all that the housing authority does. We have Blueprint 15. Many of the Blueprint 15 folks are leaders in the housing authority community, or their leadership has been there for years and care about the residents. But these are not easy conversations and discussions. You have to move people. We talk about the issues of the lack of food out there and the lack of resources. The thing we're trying to do is make the housing better and make the environment better. And we're working with those families to make sure that we got urban strategy in there, making sure that residents have somebody to talk to on a regular basis, so that when we're at Kennedy Square, it's not just, okay, here's your voucher, go look for an apartment, come back when you find something. In this particular case, we'll have caseworkers working with those families, helping them, transporting them to look at apartments that might work best for them, knowing what their family situations are, schools, where they may be working. That level of detail in working with the families is what Movement 15, the urban strategies, and SHA will all be doing. But it's a very, very tough time today with all the issues that so many residents are facing. Having to deal with. We started this process prior to the COVID, and now things are worse in terms of mental health. Things are worse in terms of poverty, and so now we're trying to find resources and getting resources to help people with mental health issues. All that stuff, there are dollars out there that we're working with families and getting those things. So it's the job hasn't gotten any easier since COVID. It's gotten worse and tougher for all of us. But we're going to be dealing with those issues for residents as well.
I want to just talk a little bit in context of why this conversation is so important. And as I'm listening to Bill talk a lot about how they're trying to make sure that folks can come back to the neighborhood, there's also something moving in my brain about what this neighborhood is going to actually look like. Because we talk a lot about mixed income and the importance of bringing mixed income. But we've seen across the country, Syracuse is kind of late to the game, that oftentimes mixed income can lead to gentrification. So the important part of this conversation that is being said in the undertones is we have to make sure residents can actually come back, and all the steps that we're taking to make sure they can come back. Because when you start having market rate rents, you start attracting people who are wealthier, oftentimes whiter, changing the neighborhood forever. And across the country, if you go to places like Brooklyn, Queens, even Washington, D.C., they are turning over the cultures. They're losing their culture. They're losing the affordability. And so when we're talking about why residents have to come back and why it's so important and why it should be on the top of the mind of everyone at this table and everyone in this audience, is because we have I-81 happening, right? And there's almost 28 acres of land that will become available as a result of I-81 coming down, whether you like it or not. And something's going to happen to that land. And so what we're gonna do, right, in terms of my position and my work is like, we're fighting really hard to make sure that land is used for 100% affordable housing. That's really the only option, right? We don't want market rate for that 28 acres of land. We'll let public housing figure out the market rate piece, right? But for the 28 acres of land, I think it's pivotal that that land is affordable housing and it's a community land trust so people can start building back equity. Because we can't lose the history here. Before the highway came, this neighborhood was owned by Black people. We're not talking about just people who are living in public housing. We're not talking about renters. We're talking about home ownership, right? 90% of Syracuse's Black residents live in that footprint. Overwhelmingly, almost 52% of those people own their own homes. That is lost and gone forever. It's never coming back. And so as a part of this project, and funny enough, public housing is predominantly white, right? But the switchover happened because they got granted to go buy houses in the suburbs. And then they moved the folks who got displaced into public housing. And so for me and the work that we do, it's our job to make sure it does not happen again. So when Walt was talking about history repeating itself, that's what we're talking about. And so while public housing is one piece of that, and we have to hold them accountable and make sure that they're bringing folks back, that their right to return policies are up to par, beyond up to par, right? And it's all of our responsibility and their responsibility to hold them accountable. We have to also be thinking about what Blueprint 15 is doing in that neighborhood, what New York State DOT, what the federal government is doing in that neighborhood, and how we're making sure we're protecting them, folks who live there. And it's not an easy task. And I think we all know that. I think that's kind of what we're sensing here. And I just want to kind of name it, if it wasn't already named, the elephant in the room, of like, this is an at-risk neighborhood. And it's at risk of losing its culture, its identity, its affordability.
And I think right now we can do something about it. We could be teaching our children the history of the 15th Ward, where you have a coffee house, maybe every other weekend, we have some kind of history in the coffee house about the 15th Ward, because I'm not from here. This happened, what's going on happened to me twice. I'm from Greenburgh, New York. They tore down my house and built 247. They tore down our whole African-American community, and at that time we were all Negroes or colored, and I was a little girl. That was my swamp. I used to walk through to get my toes and stuff to bring to my kindergarten class. So all this is going right now. But what about the residents, 15th Ward residents that have businesses? The new housing that they're gonna build, why not have some of these former residents that their people have businesses? Ask them, do you want a business? And then get the training. There's so many progressive things that we've been working on and trying to say to our tenants association where we can keep the history and make us powerful because we're not dumb. Mom said, once you got it up here, they can't take it away from you. And they're not gonna take it away from you. And I feel that from my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and to the children where I live at in Pioneer Home, should be exposed to learning on the weekends, have the coffee house open with different kind of activities. People are donating to me microscopes. I got chemistry sessions. All this, and because you start the learning and the progression now, so when the things get built, our people are ready.
So
hello, everybody.
actually, can I address this for just a minute? I'm sorry, because there's a couple things that came up that we need to. I think we can share more information about what else is happening. So Vanessa brought up some good stuff. Ms. Mabel will touch on some of the stuff you're talking about. So there's a couple things. One is Vanessa's right. Syracuse is late to the game. One of the benefits of being late to the game is that you get to learn about people's mistakes. And so when you look at the gentrification, and at least you define it as displacement. So one of the things you listed out here, what's the federal government doing? What's the state doing? What's HUD doing? So one of the things that the city is doing.
Excuse me, you're talking too fast and low.
You're hard to understand.
My wife has told me for 32 years I'm hard to understand, so that's a message I can hear. Okay. So there's a few things to think about. One is from an affordability standpoint, the city has worked really hard to make sure that we are adding affordable units here. So when Bill lays out this project, we're going from we're going from 670 units to about 1,400 units, weaving the community, specifically at the Housing Authority's project. The overwhelming amount of what is being added are affordable. Home Headquarters has worked with New York State and with the city so that they have been building within the footprint a lot of affordable homeowner housing. There's 6 brand new holes in the ground on South State Street that are right across from all the houses that they've done with city and state funding on Woodland, Garfield, and Victor. And to the point of education, besides the fact that we talked about the Early Childhood Center, the Children's Rising Center, Martin Luther King School currently does not go through middle school, but is exploring going through middle school. ITC has the highest graduation rate in the city, and they're opening the STEAM school that is so innovative that New York State had to pass special legislation to be able to allow it to be created. So this is the most public school, rich neighborhood in the city by the time the STEAM school opens. And we are adding affordable housing over and over again. Additionally, Ms. Mabel, you brought up the main point about businesses. One of the things that the city's been doing is leading discussions with the Black and minority business owners and interested entrepreneurs in the neighborhood. And so of this $50 million choice neighborhood grant that we have been awarded through HUD, we've got millions of dollars that are going to go towards supporting that work so that the money that is coming into this community stays in this community. So it's not just creating more housing, it's creating affordable housing so people don't get displaced. It's creating homeownership opportunities for those that are low income and for workforce, so for those that are just below the area median income. And it's creating those entrepreneurial opportunities. When you talk about real estate development, it is one of the most exclusively white industries in the entire nation. And so the city's business development department, our East Adams development director, they've been leading this work on how exactly do we grow that specifically right here. And so this is work that we've been actively doing for years. And now with a $50 million award, we've got millions more dollars to put into it. So I just wanted to touch on a lot of these concerns that Vanessa raised. And thank you for giving me a minute, so sorry.
You got that. So my name is Kiwanka Ellerby. I am a Blueprint 15 navigator, neighborhood navigator. Also, I sit on the board for Syracuse Housing Authority as treasurer for the tenant organization. So I want to talk about a few things that me and my lovely co-worker here, and we have been doing for years and years. I'm telling y'all, it's no joke. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, cold, sleet, and snow. With the push of our supervisor, Ray Pride, he told us every day, we family, I got y'all can do this. Having a trust issue with the neighborhood is a big thing. Can I say that again?
Yes.
Having a trust issue with your neighbors is a big thing. Me and Tara Harris, we built trust with our neighbors in our neighborhood. We work programs outside of things that we can bring to the community. Starting off with me. Thank you, Mr. Bill, I appreciate it, but I got to sit on the college board, which is I help kids in the neighborhood to prepare themselves and to get scholarships. Syracuse Housing Authority, we help kids get scholarships to go to college. They all don't come from Syracuse Housing Authority, but they all come from the stuff that I work outside of it. That means my sorority, Zeta Amicus. I also could go to the Deltas to help kids get scholarships. I also could go to different organizations to help them get scholarships. Also, I work for Syracuse City School District. I sit on a lot of hats and I do a lot of things.
Also, before we started out, we had RHAs, we were working hand in hand with Upstate. That means we got to participate in a lot of their things. That means Tara, that's her area. If you're sick, you need help, you need dentist, you need a doctor's appointment, you need anything, you go to see Miss Harris, because Miss Harris has that connection that you can get that support. If you need any help with your children, far as from 5 on up, you can see Kiwanka or Marquita. So when we get in here and talk about this is missing, that is missing, this is missing, that's not there, if we cannot run them through, Syracuse Housing Authority, my supervisor, Raekwon Pride, allow us to run those programs and to give offer more help. We're talking about rain, sleet, or snow. If it's cold, we make house visits. I make house visits. I go to their house and bring them applications so that their children can sign up for college. I make videos. I get out there, I'll be like, oh, this makes sense, this sound right, wait, do this sound good, do this, keep it, edit this, that. We work hard. We work very, very hard to where we are. We cannot have nobody to break us down into where we've been working. We've been working this on our feet. God bless her soul, since Ms. Gladys had closed her eyes. She left a legacy. She left a legacy, and I'm a part of that legacy. I am only 46 years old. She came and got me from the stoop and said, baby, if you can be a leader in cheerleading, you could be a leader in this, but you won't be a leader in this situation. I didn't want to do it, Vanessa. I did not want to be into that. But she saw the push and the fight into me, and she put that burn into me, and she put that fire into me. So honoring Miss Gladys Smith, I'm going to ride until the wheels fall off. I'm going to stand tall. I'm going to do everything that she told me to do. Stand up, speak up, be there for your residents. Don't stop, listen. Don't be scared of their faces, but know what you're speaking. Don't just speak to just be speaking. Speak with authority and power.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I wasn't going to say nothing this evening, but Wanda, she set the tone for me. I'm Tara Harris. I lived in Syracuse Housing Authority my entire life. So from birth to now, I am a resident leader, and I'm a damn good one, excuse my French. I am the vice chairperson of Pioneer Homes, which has over 600 units. I'm also the secretary of Pioneer Homes. I'm also a resident advocate for Upstate. My whole job is about the residents, right? I live here. I want to be that voice for the people that we're talking about, right? We're trusted leaders, right? I can get the people out. They know me. We're committed to one another. When we were going for that $50 million CNI grant, this one right here, I thought the residents were going to kill me. I'm that one knocking on the door. Come on out. I need you. We have a voice this time. We wasn't even born the first time around when this happened to the 15th ward, but we're here now. We can make changes, right? So when we got that grant and I got to stand up there with all the higher ups and unveil that $50 million check, it proved to me that the work that I'm doing for my community matters. I'm not doing it for anybody else besides my community. Whoever doesn't agree with it, you can have your opinion, but it's for the residents. That's why I do it.
You know, I have no contradiction with Kawaka or Tara. The only thing that is missing is that if you're in a meeting, such as the Tenants Association, you have a president, a treasurer, a secretary. We have no committee designation. So I said, ask how much money is Syracuse Housing giving the association so we can do some programs. Monique Calhoun and I, we have a program. I came to Tara. I said, we would like to take the kids fishing, tell them about the garden and other activities. I came to her about mini education. She said, oh, I'll call you. I even called my Spectrum people And they sent me the next, copy of the phone calls I made and didn't get. I have them for 4 years, trying to communicate. You get the residents out? I said to talk, because I was new. I was to myself in those buildings at Babylon Court. So I busted out, because I have ideas, and I just figured, why not go to the tenants meeting and find out what's going on? It's dysfunctional. I have nothing against the work they do. I'm not from here. I don't know nothing about the place that got torn out, Mulberry Square or something like that. All I am sometimes new eyes show you things that's lacking. And I'm new eyes. My grandkids and the children in Syracuse housing is new eyes. Not putting down that you get scholarships and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to figure out how we can have a fresh air fund where we stop sending our young minority children to white families, where we can send them down south like they did to me at my church. I went to Virginia Union University as a 13-year-old to learn my history, to talk and stuff like that. This is what I've been working on, and it's not a selfish job. It's a lot of people that know me. And I've been doing this ever since I was 14 years old at George Washington College in White Plains, New York, where they said we couldn't go to the YWCA or the YMCA. A lot of your young folk haven't been through the struggles I've been through, and I don't mean a selfish I mean the generation that's making us recognize. But I tell my kids, you gotta keep on pushing for the right of who you are, because we got too many people that wanna take it away. Let's get together and work together. If you got a treasure, how much money do you have so we can do something? Don't get none. Agenda, don't get none. Let's be functional, not dysfunctional and transparent. You can do your work, but I also want to see how we can work with the HBC, because I get mail through them. And I sit down and I jot down program. We got to do something. Housing thing that's going on is beautiful, but it's not the human touch. We got to touch each other. We're from the Lord Almighty. I want to relax and go back and do my study, because I've been a minister for over 20 years. And I want to go back to college, got 1 degree, and I want to get another. But I want to see folks come along like me and like you. This is important.
Before we end, I wanted to give Marquita the opportunity to talk about the faith housing program that we're doing at Blueprint 15.
Yes.
I was prompted when Mike Thomas talked about the work that Home Headquarters is doing with the city and the southern part of our footprint. And Marquita, Kawaka, and some of our other staff are working really hard to help our residents in our neighborhood become homeowners.
So the FAITH program is a 12-week program where we focus on letting people know that you can create generational wealth through homeownership. And right now, our biggest issue is tackling the generational poverty mindset that most of the tenants have in the 15th ward. So we started classes with financial literacy. So that is just broken down to each week. We are starting with just banking basics, budgeting, credit, and things of that nature. We then collaborate with Home Headquarters, where they go through the first time home buyer classes, and they do those classes for 4 weeks. When we finish those classes, we do a recap, and then we also teach them about estate planning. So the program itself is definitely for 15th ward residents. We also try to provide them with closing cost assistance. Some people are not eligible to receive that with Home Headquarters. And so, we try to fill in that gap, especially for those who are eligible by living in the 15th ward for this homeownership program. I am in talks with Home Headquarters about the homes that they built in the 15th ward to see if we can try to allocate some just for residents that go through this homeownership class. So I'm still in the process of like nailing down a hard number of homes. My goal is to have at least 5 homeowners by the end of this full year programming. We're just ending our second cohort on Wednesday. We had 23 people enrolled in the class. Those 23 people, 17 finished their home buyer classes with home headquarters. And at least 4 have already booked their one-on-one or already had their one-on-ones with the housing counselors at home headquarters. I also refer people to the Financial Empowerment Center through the city if they're not ready for home ownership. We want to put people in places where even if they're not ready for home ownership, they're able to, affect their credit score by getting the literacy they need to, fix their credit so they can move to a place that they want to move to, not because they have to. I feel like this program is a great benefit. Like even if you don't feel like you need to buy a house, you can just come and get the financial literacy, which I feel like lacks in our area. We don't talk about growing up, my parents didn't talk about buying homes or doing these things. And so I think that by changing the mindset of the residents that are currently there, and then I encourage them to bring their kids there too. Because I'm not trying to just reach you, I'm trying to reach beyond you and get that generational mindset where we can do it. I hope that there is more affordable housing options available when the highway comes down, and that, people that are participating in this class are able to take advantage of those opportunities. And we want to be there to help fund for that. Beyond faith, my sole purpose right now is to create programming. Have big ideas. I'm trying to tackle the education issue with Dr. King, where we have 60% of kindergartners missing more than 60 days and had the second lowest reading levels in the state. How do we fix that? We have programs where they're reading the kids at lunch, but they're not there. So how are we gonna fix that? So I am meeting with people to create programs that are gonna be of use and not just talking about it. So Ms. Mabel, feel free to talk to me if you need to create a program where you wanna have a green space. I'm your person, come see me.
Also the reading what you're talking about, that's a.
Come see me.
Okay.
I have a great
I don't know where
idea,
you're
but
at.
we can work together, and I have no problem working with anybody that wants to come work with me. I am available every day at Blueprint after 1 o'clock, because I go to school during the day.
Yeah, I would
But
like to
I
talk.
also want to just make it it's an open invite for everyone that's here. I don't mind sitting with you, I don't mind hearing you. And if it's something that I know that we can do, or something that I can write for funding so that it can be something that we can implement, I will help you. I have no problem with that. That is my sheer purpose. So I just want to thank everybody for their time today, because I really did learn about it. Oh, he wants me to tell you the FAITH acronym. It is Further Advancing Independence Through Homeownership. The program is named after my niece, Faith. And I'm glad that I was able to implement it, and that I was given a chance to do something of that magnitude. So I really do appreciate just hearing everybody's concerns, hearing their issues, hearing things that I've heard for the first time. This is the first time I've sat on a panel like this. And I'm just absorbing it all in. So if you have any ideas or things that you want to run across me after this, I'll be here. I am always available. My phone goes off at 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'm answering for residents. And I know that people don't see the work that we do. They just hear about it in a good or bad fashion, but we are really here for residents. I answer text messages late at night. I answer my door for people being, fed up with something or have a neighbor issue or something like that. We are there. Like, we can't just ignore it, we're there. So I just want everyone to just, please feel free to come speak with me if you have an idea or if you have some type of anything, it doesn't matter. I sit on the East Adams community development work group, and we were really just talking about how we get people that are color to open businesses once these transformations come. This work is being done. You might not know it's being done, but it's being done. I've been sitting on this committee. I leave school early to make sure I make the meeting on time, so that I can sit here with the city and other elected officials and other organizations to figure out how does this look? How does this workforce development look when it comes to construction and getting people of color to help build what we're envisioning or what we're talking about? I sit in rooms and I'm trying to be your voice, so if you have something, tell me, because I'm gonna say it at the meeting. I have no problem opening my mouth and saying something. I just want to be able to make sure that no one's thinking that they're not being heard, because we are in rooms that you might not be privy to, or that you might not be aware that these conversations are occurring, but they are. These concerns that were addressed, I think for almost everything that was addressed today, I've been in a meeting the last month about it. And I just think that we have to be receptive to change and not just be so against it, but also we have to have some trust and some faith in the work that's being done by Blueprint, Urban Strategies, Vanessa and Knightley, the city, and housing. I also believe that, I lost my train of thought, but I also believe that with Urban Strategies, the work is being done too, to follow up. They told us in a meeting, we meet with them every Monday. They give us an update on every single tenant in McKinley Manor, because they have surveyed every single tenant in McKinley Manor. They have to keep track of them. They have to physically meet with them at least once every 3 months after they move, no matter where they move to. Even if they don't move into another housing property, they still have to physically meet with that person at least once every 3 months. They're tracking this information and we're on top of it. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's a trust issue, and I really wish that we would be more trusting in this process. We know what was done before, we know what not to have happen again, and I don't think that anybody in this room is going to allow that to happen. So I just think that if you allow us to do our jobs and report back to you before the assumptions and before the negative things come into play, I think we will be a lot further along with a lot of things.
We are coming up. We're coming up on our 6:30 end time, and I want to be respectful to all of your schedules by honoring that. I want to thank all of you, and especially the residents who came out today to share your experiences and your questions. It was really valuable. I also want to thank the panelists who made time to join us and answer those questions and share what's going on with this project. Thank you so much. Before you go, I would just like to make a couple of short announcements. We have surveys that'll just allow you in a couple of minutes to share what your experience was like today and help us improve as we do more of these. We really want to hear how it went for you and what we can do better. And we will be doing more of these. The next one is actually going to be at the Dunbar Center on Monday, November 18th, same time, 5 to 6:30. It's going to be dealing with a different topic. It's going to be talking about the decline of local news resources and trying to seek feedback from the community about what information they need, how they consume local news, and those kinds of topics. So we hope you can join us for that as well. And please take food with you if you can. We have a lot left over. Thank you again. We really appreciate being here from all of us at Central Current.